Right. So, this is what we were talking about in the last class, but we digressed a bit. This will keep happening. NLP course is like that. We digress a lot, and I depend on these guys to keep me in check. That's the TAs. To come to me after the class and say, sir, next class you have to be on point. That's what I'll try to do this time. Because we have a schedule to maintain. But we are always open for discussion, so feel free to interact. So we were talking of tokenization, and I just pulled up some old slides instead of just talking without any speaking aid. But you sort of get the idea where why tokenization is a thing. Now, first things first, tokenization is defined as this atomic unit, and we talked about something which the smallest unit which has meaning, right? But that's not necessarily true. I sort of mentioned in a line in the last class that it does not need to have meaning. Tokenization has a lot of purposes. Most important of those, at least in the early days, was the entirety of language input is nothing more than a series of symbols thrown around. Right? So they're organized in a certain way, and you're feeding that to a computer. So for a machine to understand that jumble of or sequence of symbols, the first thing that the system needs to understand is where does a symbol begin and end. Okay. Because the entirety of language again is about composition. Take small things, make bigger things out of it. Right? So you take characters, you make words out of it. You take words, phrases, sentence, paragraphs, and so on and so forth. So it's about composition. So what is the minimal unit that we should talk about such that the computational effort is reduced? In the end, it is that. Tokenization is basically about that. And while doing that, not make things complicated for ourselves. Right? So in general, something makes your job easier, but in certain cases, impossible to deal with. Or very hard to deal with. For example, if you take this example, right? How many tokens here? We can say, okay, 76 tokens. So 76 tokens. But is that correct? Or are we making a mistake? This is space separated. This paragraph, and if you, in case you want to read it, this is Sheldon's description of his spot. So, is this enough? Can we do something else? What about these? So, each of these green boxes are places where originally the text was, the word was attached to the punctuation. Now we have just broken that. Why? Well, there are other places where these words would appear without punctuations, and we are unnecessarily creating a difference between processing of those words. Whereas, apart from the pause that a person takes, there is no difference, right? That's one thing. What about it's and I have? Contractions. Huh? Depends. A lot of things can be answered just by saying depends. Right? What about face and faces? So, practically speaking, faces is carrying extra grammatical information, right? And it is the same as face. So, when we had brother apostrophe S, we say brothers cat of brother, right? But so we said, okay, let's separate this and so on. But are we doing the same thing for cat and cats? We were not. Why? We should, actually. This is cat plural, this is cat singular, this is face singular, this is face plural. That's what we should do. It's too expensive. Computationally, it is too expensive to do that. So for the time being, we will, and it also makes sense sort of, because just that plurality, we cannot lose that information. In the last 2 decades, most of the search engines would just chop this off, chop the suffix off. It's called stemming. And say, okay, because the most of the word is the same, I would treat it as all its other forms. So face and faces will become FAC, ES and E gone, sort of. Right? So it makes search easier. You have why does it make it easier? Anybody can anybody guess why this would work? Why this would be a good idea? First thing, indexing keeps the index small. Index is a list of keywords or list of words that you want to deal with. When you are searching, your traditional, actually even today, most of the search is keyword-based search. You enter a keyword and that keyword is searched in a library of or a collection of a database of words. Right? And with each word you have associated pages. And in theory, a search result is an intersection of the pages associated with the keywords of your search phrase. If you have 3, 4, then the intersection would be the highest ranking output, right? In the simplest term, none of the search engines actually do this. Right? There are much better ways to do it. Right? There are a lot of other things that have to go into it, but yeah.
Just talking about suffixes as well, like faces becomes faces. What about prefixes like lock and unlock? Will you then stem the unless?
So, let me come to the suffix, the whole thing, because there is a whole family of things, right? So, typically when things change grammatically, right, you can say there is one word and it changes forms, right? So those forms are, if you space separate everything, those forms are what you see as tokens. Right? So space separated tokens, the surface form, faces, would be the token. But it has a root form, it has a core form, which is face. Right? I say root versus stem, there is a difference. Root is the complete dictionary entry. It belongs in the dictionary. So index would be the root. Its token, its plural form is
indices.
X is gone, right? So I can in indices remove the IES. Whatever I have left, IND, that's it, IND, right? That is the stem. Okay. So stemming is brutally chopping off without doing anything else. Depends. Hard to do. Because for chopping off, you need to figure out what to chop off, right? So what is the basic requirement? You need a list of possible attachments, which are called suffixes, things that attach at the end. These are suffixes. So you have a list of suffixes and you almost blindly take off the longest suffix that is attached to the word. Hold on. This is the easiest way to stem. It's not perfect. Actually, nothing about stemming is perfect. Okay, stemming is a fundamentally flawed idea. Okay. So this question originally was about index. If you want to make them same, then you need to chop off EX also, right? Which we don't do, which we can't do because EX is not a common suffix, right? So we are in a soup. And that is fundamentally why stemming is not linguistically motivated. It is not coming out of language studies. Right? When we look at language linguistically, we think of not stemming but lemmatizing or morphological analysis. Analysis comes later, but lemmatizing, lemma, root, right? That is face, faces, index, indices. Right? Finding the lemma. That part is lemma. Right? So, the number of tokens is what you see in the surface text. The number of dictionary entries would be types. That's just a term, type token. And this distinction is actually required because it tells you a lot. If you take a large corpus, lemmatize it, you get a list of types, and you obviously have the list of tokens, right? List of unique tokens, let's say. There's a list of unique tokens, list of unique lemmas, right? And you just get a ratio of this, the size of these two lists. Tells you a lot about a language. Can you guess what you would learn? Number of tokens divided by number of unique tokens divided by number of unique types. So naturally, if the number of tokens is high, that means a lot of words are modifying, changing form. Right? What does that tell you? Actually, that tells you a little bit more than that. A lot of words are modifying in a lot of ways.
It tells about vocabulary richness of a language.
Vocabulary richness of a language. That is sort of true, but that vocabulary richness is coming from grammatical changes, taking on grammatical properties. Right? So, type to token conversion is almost always grammatical. Grammatical. Some grammatical property has changed for a type to take on a different shape and form, morphology, the study of change. Okay. So, whereas, there is one thing. One might want to compare languages on their vocabulary richness and so on and so forth. Pretty much all languages are equally rich in their vocabulary. Almost all. There are very few languages which are not very rich, and those languages are often endangered languages, where the culture has failed them. Meaning there are very few people left who are speaking those languages. They are not creating new words. They are not making literary works. Literary is not always written down. It's always more often it is spoken or sung, right? And they come up with words in conversation with each other. That's how languages evolve. Languages which are dying would have limited vocabulary, but any language which is sustained and fed socially will always have huge vocabulary. Okay. So vocabulary richness can be considered as a measure of the health of a language, pretty much. Otherwise, there is no pretty much no. What it does say is that it is grammatically different. A language which has too many tokens as compared to types is grammatically rich. We say rich, also it is a sort of a odd way, but because, just hold on a second. because I might hurt myself. Where I'm putting my hand, there is a pin or something here. Good thing I had a metal stuff nearby. But this is a very sharp thing. So, when it comes to morphological richness, again, every language can express the same amount of grammaticality. It's not as if one language is deficient as compared to others in expressing grammatical things. Its culture, its language's interactions with each other, its past literary origins and so on and so forth that define how the language expresses itself. So again, when we say richness, it's not rich versus poor. My PhD thesis was on morphologically rich languages. And I did use the term morphologically poor languages as well, but it's not in any, it's not a comparison, it's not there, it's not a contest, it's not that kind of a comparison, right? So we are not putting a language up on a pedestal, we are just saying that there are certain languages which have more overt grammatical expression for reasons which are completely social or even syntactic, right? So most of the Southeast Asian languages are grammatically or morphologically rich. Why? Because we do not have, we often allow, in conversation, we allow our speaker to switch the words around. We discussed this example last time, right? In order to sustain that, we have to do it, right? Hindi is morphologically poorer compared to Dravidian languages for reasons unknown. I mean, similar reasons, but there are some of the most grammatically or morphologically challenging or rich languages are actually Nordic languages. Finnish and Norwegian are considered the most grammatically productive languages. So, while you will hear this term, I request you to change the term to grammatically or morphologically productive versus not so productive. That's, again, not a comparison. But grammatical variation, morphology, itself is a challenge. We usually do not address it right now. We will talk about suffixes and things like that. But some of the more basic challenges are early on, just in the written form. Things that are hyphenated. Grammarly must have pointed, wherever you are writing, there is some kind of grammar assistance. And they say, if you say self-worth, it says hyphenate this. If you're writing something else, it does not say that, right? Why? It's convention, right? Often hyphenation is problematic. You might choose to hyphenate. If you are writing yourself, you might choose to hyphenate, and that hyphenation might be for emphasis, which is now considered a very taboo thing in formal writing because AI always gives an M dash, emphasis dash for emphasis. That's a bad thing. Hyphenation is typically frowned upon, but almost everything that, so compounding and hyphenation sort of go hand in hand. It's only after, decades of usage that hyphenation is dropped, and science fiction then becomes science-based fiction. Okay. Earlier it was science-fiction, sort of. But yeah, rigidity also comes by usage, so it can go either way. So numbers all different kinds of numbers. It could be a phone number, it could be a house number, it could be weight, measures, right? It could be anything. First, cardinal, ordinal, rank 1, first rank, ST, 1 ST, so alphanumeric. Figuring that out is often a problem, so we want to decide whether we want to separate the numbers and characters or do we want to keep them together. And numbers are a big challenge for current large language models also, because internally we are never processing numbers. We're just dropping the numbers and replacing it with something else, and just a tag. And even when we use the numbers, it does not convey any meaning for the sentence. So that's another problem. Dates, numbers, dates, phone numbers, abbreviations, all different kinds of abbreviations. It's not all capitals, it's not capitals with dots, it may or may not have dots. All of those are expressed here in one sentence. So these are things that we have to keep in mind when we are creating a focused natural language understanding or processing application, right? If your entire NLP application is just sending an API call to LLM, maybe you don't have to worry about it. Take the text and send it and they'll worry about it. But somebody has to. I hope it's you. Because that means you're doing something, right? Not somebody else. Engineer versus developer. Okay. Punctuations, different kinds. We talked about ellipses. URLs, it's a new form. And this is not just one thing. URLs is not just one thing. There are a number of different such things that appear. For example, if you're processing government forms, government documents, right? They would be or legal documents. They would be referring to some other case, some other file, which is something dash something slash something, blah blah blah, right? And you have to retain it because that thing is an entity. That thing is referring to a physical or a logical artifact somewhere. Breaking sentences. There would be full stops at random places and so on. Emojis. And then there are Unicode troubles. In order to create one uniform writing system or encoding system for all scripts, we have run into some issues also. That there are certain characters which are not visible. They are called zero width characters, meaning they do not occupy any place, but they help joining other characters. So there are both kinds. Non-zero width joiners and zero width joiners. There are both kind of characters available, which are invisible. You cannot see them, but they are there in the encoding. Right? So Unicode causes its own problems. We have to worry about it because English is pretty safe. Anything in Roman script, especially unaccented Roman script, which is what English uses, is pretty much ASCII. Right? We have, and Unicode just borrowed the same numbers from ASCII, and that's what you see, right? But when you are typing something, right, if there are emojis and all, sure, there is a list. Go to French, go to some other language, and now you start to see problems because those accents are defined somewhere else, right? E and E with an accent are completely different things. Right? They cannot be treated the same way. And there are these kind of attacks also that you write something which makes perfect sense to a human being, does not make any sense for the machine, because what you see, you can read it. The characters used to produce that are different Unicode characters. I'll take an example which troubled me for a long time during my PhD. I was working on Hindi Marathi, so which both use Devanagari as a script, right? So there was one simple character, Many people would recognize this character, right? Easy to do. This is R. R. There is another character. Z. It's J with a nuqta. So that can happen with anything. Nuqta can be attached to a lot of different words, right? So, fine. So, when Valentine's is coming, what will you give your significant other? Say in Hindi. Let me give you a hint. Flower. उसको हिंदी में कह दो भाई. पता नहीं गिफ्ट के बारे में सोचने लगे. What would you give it?
Fool. Fool.
Okay. 1%. Okay. Okay.
Fool.
ये बात. Rich guy. हम फूल देंगे फूल देंगे
Fool. Fool.
फूल देंगे वो पहले से है. So what is this?
Fa.
Huh?
Fa.
That is fur. Fur.
Fa.
This is fur. This is fur. Seriously. This is बहुत बड़ा डिफरेंस है. प say p and then push air. P. That's the first one. Phool. That's the, what is it? Ha, ha, ha. That thing is aspiration. When you add air to it, in the same series, you have pa, 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 ba, ba. Ba, add air to it, it becomes bha. Right? Aspiration. Aspirated. Okay? Huh? No. Put your mouth in fingers in front of your mouth and you ka, ka. You will see the air come out. Ka, ga, ga. Air has to come out. That's right. Right? So, now comes the question of nuqta. This nuqta. You also know this character. No. होता है. ड और ढ. People take this and attach. This is a Unicode character. Nuqta is a Unicode character. So for every, there is nothing in the circle. It's literally, okay, the way it is, with the way you will usually see it is, that's a dotted circle. There is nothing in it. This is writing BS. So instead of creating all of those characters, they said, हम एक नुक्ता बना देते हैं. Right? We'll just attach that nukta to wherever it is required. So take pha, attach nukta, it becomes pha. They are actually different things. Then take za, remove the nukta, it becomes ja. So, zaruri. Khair, not khair. So nukta is very important for a lot of words in our vocabulary, right? So it's pretty sensible to have a separate nukta as a matra in Devanagari. It makes sense. The problem is, then typists started writing da with an ukhta to make da. So the thing is that da is visibly same, but in some fonts you will see that. Can you see the difference there? Between these two. It's slightly on the side. The nuqta is slightly on the front. Just understanding what script you are using, what encoding method you are using, often creates troubles in tokenization. So it's tokenization as we move forward becomes more and more aware of and dependent on the environment, the computational and representational environment that you are working with, both in terms of character representation and representation like we are looking at here, and also in terms of what are you representing at the end, that is meaning representation versus just symbols, right? So characters are not just characters, characters are numbers in the system. Which number are you using, right? So what I was saying is you can write an entire word, and people do that. Let's say you're using just images to spell out your name or word, name or some other word, right? Would it make sense? To a human being, it makes perfect sense. You take 4 images of characters, and join them together, it becomes a 4-letter word, right? So, very artfully written LOVE, right? But it's not using the ASCII characters, the Unicode encoding, right? We do that all the time. You have in your phone keyboard an entire set of emojis which are actually letters, right? Images of letters. Everything that we write is actually an image associated with a number. So why not extend it? Because the system would not be able to understand unless you understand it visually, which is a whole new ballgame, right? So tokenization often responds to how things are represented, right? So for many languages, it becomes dependent on what is the vocabulary of the underlying representation system. If it was just ASCII, tokenization would be slightly different. If it is Unicode, you have to worry about some other things. If it is Unicode on a certain range, we again have to worry about it because, for example, Hindi, Marathi, Nepali, all 3 use the same character set, but they use different characters within that set in certain cases. So, what is kala for me is, Marathi speakers, what is kala for me is, koi Marathi speaker? Any Marathi speaker here? Huh? So most of the North Indian Hindi speakers would not be able to pronounce that ra, right? I can a little bit. They will not agree, but I can. But those variations, the phonetic variations of how we speak, come down to script, cause problems. Then you have these attachments. This is not the only character which needs to be attached with other things. By the way, what is this character? Tra. Why does this exist? See? How will you write it? When you're typing, let's say Roman to Devanagari conversion, Or, better still, for those who have studied Sanskrit, they would also understand this. Probably, Tra is this. Adha ta and Ra. Ta halantara is Tra. Another thing you have is
Sha.
Ksha.
Sha.
Kaksha. Shiksha. Ksha. Adha ka adha sha. Adha ka sha. Right? What? You're trying to understand Hindi. No, what I am trying to say is so I am taking Hindi example, okay? But almost all Indian languages have these
Yes.
consonant clusters which come together. But you can actually take the individual consonants and write them together. But we have a combined form somewhere. We have a combined form of writing also. So this becomes unnecessarily complicated, right? You could have just say, I could have just said this. Nobody would agree that this is the right spelling. Nobody in their right mind would say, no, this is acceptable. It's the same thing. Right? So there is cultural issues. There are certain things that are written in a certain way. There are other things, and that becomes critical when we are doing ASR and stuff. What is the lowest form of thing? How many of you can differentiate between
Sha. Sha. Sa. Sha.
How many of you know the difference? Speaking it is a different story altogether.
Sa. Sha. Sa.
Huh?
Sa. Sha.
श शक्कर का श षटकोण का What's the difference? You can speak it. Come here. I could hear it actually.
Sa.
Just the two. Don't bring sa in it. Okay. Sh sh. Did you hear the difference?
No.
The first was shakkar ka sha.
Shakkar.
The second was षटकोण का sh.
Shanivar.
समझ में आया? My name is Manish,
Shanivar.
not Manish. So my name is What's the difference? Yes, it is retroflex. Retroflex are that kara, right? La with tongue turned up
La. La.
is halfway.
Ra.
Is retroflex. There is also Malayalam and Tamil speakers. Tamil itself, it's further retroflex. All the way back, right? Huh?
Ra.
Tamil? Oh, you are a Tamil. Okay. They do, and they very loudly tell others that this is how it should be spoken. So that's also there. So, how would you say, okay, what's the word for, rain? Oh, that's Malayalam, I think. But, any Tamil? ऐसा वाला तमिल है. You are there? Come. What was the word that you just said?
Who is very
Malay.
aggressive in terms of like following rules and
There you go. Which is rain. So, Malayalam and Tamil. Wow.
Vada.
Malayalam speakers? I have. Huh? इसी को सारी लैंग्वेजेस दे दोगे क्या? So there are representational lacunae in when we move from system to system, and they become part of the. They also soften the language as you go. I introduce myself as Manish. Hey, if I insist on pronouncing my name correctly, I'll spend the days just introducing, getting them used to my pronunciation, right? So for some it is easy. I have a friend. So Hindi has shwa deletion and shwa deletion. So I'm Manish. Shwa halant, right? Or if there is an Anirudh here, is there an Anirudh? Anyone named Anirudh? Seems it's an old name now. So I have a friend Anirudh. Okay, his name is Anirudh Joshi. The problem is he's Marathi, so his name is not Anirudh Joshi. His name is Aniruddha Joshi. Aniruddha full Joshi, right? Because that's how it is. So most languages do not have short deletion. That's why we have Rama, Lakshmana, Krishna. Because apart from Hindi, everyone would complete that word. Rama. In Sanskrit, when we say Rama. It's only Hindi that we say Ram. Halant. Right? And then we say you are spelling it wrong. No man, you are speaking it wrong. Right? But that's what language is. Right? Marathi speaker, what is Shiksha? Shiksha is? What's the meaning of Shiksha?
Education.
Uttari. Where are you from?
I'm not
Punishment.
Marathi speaker. I
Pun-
live in Gujarat. So
You live in Gujarat. ठीक है.
Punishment.
ये मराठी नहीं है.
Punishment.
So, if I give you Shiksha,
Punishment.
punishment.
punishment. Exactly. So, in Hindi, I am giving you Shiksha. If you disturb me too much, I will give you Marathi Shiksha. Shiksha is punishment. So, languages, even when they are close by, will get affected by, will borrow things and will change the meaning, change the writing system, will use the same writing instrument, as in alphabet, but use it slightly differently. The pronunciation changes and so. And then there is a whole body people who are just trying to fix all of that together into a meaningful, usable thing. We bear the brunt of it because we have to process these scripts. Those scripts which have been around for 40 years on the web are fairly standardized. Those languages which 10 years ago did not have a proper unified representation on the web, same font or encoding system, are still evolving. When I started my PhD, there was no uniform encoding system for Hindi, Marathi and all of that. Unicode came much later.
2010
Right.
something.
And this is not very far away. I am talking of
2010.
It is far away, 20 years ago. Yeah, it's 20 years ago, right? But for most other languages, Bengali, Gujarati, and so many others, Unicode standards became popular in the middle of last decade. Right? So pretty much the tokenization troubles when it comes to Indian languages are still very much there. Okay. And then there are these code switching. What are we doing the tokenization for? If you are doing it for transcriptions, closed captioning. So transcriptions. Somebody is speaking half in Hindi, half in English. right? Or using native words while speaking some other language. So you talk to somebody on the street in Hyderabad and you would find that you have Telugu words and Dakhini words, core Urdu words, and then you have regular Hindi words all combined together, right? Then you have disfluencies. If you're close captioning, you run into that, right? You have fillers. I do that a lot, right? What I just did. Corrections. You go back and you say again. If you want to make meaningful sentences out of this, it's difficult. All of this has to be marked. So disfluencies have to be marked. Okay, this is a disfluency. And emojis, extra punctuation marks, and so on and so forth. I'll just jump. I like this one, but I'll correct. And number of words keep growing. That's one more problem. I don't know whether these two words will make any sense to. Who does these two words make sense to?
Yes.
These two. Anybody recognize these words?
Hindi, Ali.
Sound like that.
Ek banda. That's it? Second, okay, two people. Two people recognize it. Okay. This is from a book, and that book introduced these two cultures or names of race of people and whatever. Right, so things evolve. Languages keep evolving, they keep adding things. There are other things which are more normally going on. This is one writer adding a few words, right? But type token we have already seen. That happens all the time, right? We are creating new words, but we are creating known words in a standard form. That is morphology. That is well studied, right? Typically, you have prefix or suffix. You were talking of prefix. What do we do while stemming? We can remove suffixes. Can we do anything about prefixes? Stemming does not care about language, so it does not. Typically, it does not. But you can do that. So, available, unavailable. There are certain set of prefixes that are pretty well known, right? So, I don't know whether I gave this example here or not. Languages evolve also by borrowing words from other languages and treating them your own way. For example, there is an Urdu word fikr, and there is a Sanskrit prefix nih, without. And a friend of mine, this is a long time ago, and this is a person from a village telling me not to worry by saying, "Aap nishfikar rahiye." Sanskrit prefix, Urdu word, created a new word which was perfectly understandable in the context. Aap nishfikar rahiye. Nishfikar. Nih and fikar, sandhi, proper sandhi rules applied. Nishfikar, right? All of that happened. We create new words all the time. All the time. Right?
So how do we handle words that have the same spelling but like leaves and leaves? So how do you differentiate between them, like leaves?
Each shoots and leaves.
They are different tokens.
We don't.
They are same.
They are same. So this is the form versus function or form versus meaning. The same form can have multiple meanings. And that has to be understood contextually. What I just said, each shoots and leaves. So, each shoots and leaves. Versus huge difference. Contextually, even this, so I did mention this book. If you can find this book, do find it. It's a very nice book on punctuation and it is sort of relevant. in how we deal with them. If just having one comma completely messes this up, right? Eats, shoots and leaves versus shoots and leaves. So that's one thing. We cannot understand the difference unless we put it in a context. There is a whole theory behind it. 1935, John Firth. But the theory is older, but he sort of put it in a structure. It is called distributional semantics. Semantics is the study of meaning. Distributional semantics is this theory, is this idea that was proposed, which is that a word is quite simply, okay, the first line. This is all catchphrases kind of. A word is meaningless without its context. While there is a dictionary which can tell you meanings, a word's meaning is only known in its context. The one catchphrase. The second catchphrase is, a word shall be known by the company it keeps. John Firth. A word shall be known by the company it keeps, meaning you can understand the meaning of a word by looking at its surroundings. Many a times, now if you are reading a book, you encounter an entirely new word or a word that you have not encountered before. Do you go to the dictionary? Almost never. Why not? You can infer the meaning, you can guess at the meaning, right? So that guess is coming from the context. So the meaning is sort of distributed in the sentence, in the context where the word is being used. So if I say, I am banking on you, right? Even if you did not know this usage earlier, you sort of know that it is sort of depending on you wala meaning, right? So from the old bank meaning, and so you sort of guess there is some relation there, but this is not exactly that. And that context has to play a role. And we have to very quickly get to that in our course. We have to very quickly get to that level of understanding that, okay, how do we build the meaning of a word from its context? Okay. So a large part of our course would be around distributional semantics. That's why I brought it in. Okay. So there are different types of morphemes. The grammatical function morpheme changes, right? Suffixes that are added to add grammatical information are called inflectional. That whole thing is called inflectional morphology and inflectional affixes. There are derivational affixes also. So, for example, you say available. Available is an adjective. You say you add iti to it, ity to it, availability. You suddenly made it into a noun. Similarly, to depend is a verb. Dependable, by attaching able, you can convert a verb to adjective. So on. So you change the category of the word by attaching something. You are adding something more than just grammatical information. You are changing the meaning. You are changing the way it is used, the class in which it is used. This is a funny word actually. Google is a noun, proper noun. To Google is a verb, and then we attach ing to it. Googling again becomes a noun. So common noun, hence no capital. Okay. There are these. So morphology studies this kind of stuff, but there is something between morphology and semantics or syntax, which is clitics. Clitics are things that are not really grammatical suffixes, but also not complete words. They just attach to other words. Huh? Apostrophe VE, apostrophe S. So they cannot stand on their own. They have to attach somewhere. Cannot ka can't. NT. Don't ka DO. N apostrophe T. N apostrophe T cannot stand on its own. unless you are in Shakespearean poetry or something. Right? So there is a reduced form contraction, and it is attached to something. Token type ratio basically was telling you about how many forms each word is taking on an average, right? It is telling you how rich this is. Why is it rich? That's anybody's business, right? It is rich often to allow certain functions in the language. For example, free word order is one thing that we discussed. Pro-drop is another. Pronoun drop, subject drop. Subject drop is impossible in English, and that makes the verb very light. Any language which allows the subject to be dropped. So, to give you an example, if you want to say I will eat or I will eat it, let's say if you want to say that, I will eat, just telling somebody that I will eat. You cannot say it in any other way. So, you have not finished your dinner, I will eat. Right? That's that. In Hindi you can say, kha lunga. I can say. Right? In Hindi, I can drop the I. Main. Okay? In English you cannot. You cannot answer will eat. Huh? Yet. The problem is, there's a lot of ambiguity that comes in if you drop the I. Will eat. It will eat, he will eat, you will eat, anything can happen. But kha lunga, take the meaning. Okay? Say the same thing, drop the I. Take your own native language. You do not have to use the first person pronoun.
Yes.
And you leave no confusion. Yes?
Yes.
ठीक? This is true for Italian, for Spanish, for Latin, for most of those languages, except English. And of course, French and others, right? Germanic languages. Germanic languages, you need that. German itself does not need that. French, it is not German. But French does it? Yeah. Actually, the yeah is useless there. Yeah. Got it? In your own language, you can drop it. In English, you cannot. Right? That is why our verbs are complex. Our verbs can be spoken in a way such that it carries within itself the information about who is doing that, who is performing that action, right? So you have the freedom to contract it. So that's why the three-word Julius Caesar? No. Julius Caesar?
Unkindest.
I came, I saw, I conquered. In English, the translation is I came, I saw, I conquered. In Latin, it is came, saw, conquered. Because I is in the verb form itself. If in other forms, it will change. Right? So that's the thing. Right? So complexity of language forms perform grammatical functions. They allow you to do certain things, move things around, drop verb, drop some. It is sometimes more efficient that way. Okay. So there is a scale to sort of say how this morphological richness is computed, or how which languages are where, sort of. We have Sanskrit pretty much at the center of it. Sanskrit is not the most morphologically rich, syntactically rich language. You would have Greenlandic into Inuit. Then I said Finnish and others. That would be somewhere there in the middle. Polysynthetic. They have a actually syncretism or polysynthesis. With that takes a, but let's just say more synthetic is not or artificial. Synthetic is which allows for creation, synthesis, creation, right? Which allows for creation. Most languages in the Southeast Asia belong to this. Most languages in Southern Europe also belong to this. Most Nordic countries belong on this side. Most languages in the world belong on that side, on the lower side, which is where Farsi, English, Vietnamese, Chinese. Chinese would be at the far end of the analytic. Analytic is everything is completely separate. Japanese Japanese is somewhere in the middle. Old English, Yakut region. So you do not have. You have some very interesting things. We talked about Japanese having case markers, therefore free word order and all of that. While at the same time, how many weebs here? How many people know Japanese here? Okay. How do you say? No, you'll know. How do you pluralize a word? Okay, so most of these things are friend and friends. Friends.
Nakama.
What's the word for friend?
Nakama.
Huh? Tomo. Is friends, you just said. That's plural. No. Nakama or Tomo, both would work. Nakama or Tomo. So where did Tomodachi come from? Japanese has this huge word, tachi, which attaches to any word, then you have to pluralize it. So you have nakama is friend and nakama tachi. That whole thing, tachi, is the pluralization. So most things are not pluralized there because they have separate nouns for plural of something, but in most cases. But when you have to attach these things. Basically, writing a separate word in order to produce a grammatical effect. That is what analytical does. Analytical languages have specific words which perform grammatical functions so that you can write things separately instead of making any changes in the word itself. So, we have Farsi, for example, which is in that place it is very strange because Farsi has a very different. It is three word order. That's one thing, and it has a different kind of morphology. What kind of morphology? So there are our languages have affix based morphology. Affix, attachment at the end. Mostly affix based, few things prefixed, which is negation or category change, derivation. Most languages have affix based, some languages have prefix based. What does Farsi have? Farsi has extremely complex morphology. That is called, it can get in the middle of things. It is infixation. So something changes in the middle. Infix morphology. Any example, anything, anybody would know? Of course, it is suffixation also.
Arabic is also like this.
Yes. Farsi and Arabic both. Arabic more so. Farsi less so. Farsi is more towards analytical. Farsi is what we borrow mostly from. So Urdu is Farsi. Urdu is closer to Farsi. So you have Arrow. Favorite example. So you have that actually not. So dard e dil. Right. So that thing, I mean, you have a. It's possessive marker. Everybody would understand. But you have this markers, creating a series of things. But all of them are separate. That's why Farsi is there. Arabic would be much more on this side. So you have not talab. There is an A missing. Talb. Of course, the meaning talab is close to that. What is talab? If anybody understands that? No, addiction is not talab. Talab lagi hai, meaning I have a strong urge to. Right? That's our understanding of that meaning. But yes, desire. Talab is the desire to acquire. In the old Farsi sense, acquire knowledge. So, the infixation, the one who acquires knowledge, one who studies, is talib. One who acquires knowledge is talib. This is infixation. Of course, there is suffixation, which we. So, one who acquires knowledge, you guys, all of you are talib. So each one of you is talib. All of you together are. Taliban. So, an prefix, plurality. It was a students' movement. It was a religious students' movement, which was co-opted for political purposes, but that does not change the linguistics of things. Right? So those were students. So, Taliban is this is a word which perfectly highlights. Actually, this is not the only word. Mehraban is also Mehraban. उसमें कदर में वो चीज़ नहीं होता, लेकिन मेहर से मेहराब and मेहराब से मेहरबान. So that also follows the same thing. कद्र से कादिर. जो कद्र करता है वो कादिर है. नहीं, जिसकी कद्र होती है वो कादिर है. Right? किताब, कत्ब is word, I think. जहाँ लिखा जाता है वो है किताब. जो लिखता है वो कातिब. So who writes is katib. What is written on is kitab, and katb is the word. So there are. Okay, here is a very good question, and very commonly answered question in linguistic circles. Is there a relationship between how hard a language is to learn with that scale, right? If a language is on that end of the scale versus that end of the scale, does it become Chinese is at that end? We know that there is no relation because these languages exist. Every kid born learns one of these languages pretty much at the same time, in the same amount of time as another kid is learning another language in another part of the world. Every language is equally easy. No, it depends on where you come from. you would find it, if you know your Tamil very well, you would find it easier probably to learn Norwegian, Korean, and a few other such languages. I would find it easier to learn Persian, Persian, Dari, Pashto, because this is the entire spectrum of languages that are very close to where I am, linguistically, right? So for me, from English, all the way up to Bengali and to certain extent Assamese, all of these languages I can learn easily because they follow pretty much the same structure that I use all the time, right? These are all Indo-European languages, right? That's an oversimplification. Not every one of the Indo-European languages are equally easy for me. I would find it very hard, for example, to learn Chinese, right? Similarly, coming from see, if you are not very pedantic about pronunciation, you can learn pretty much everything. Pronunciation is so that's why there are Hindi speakers who are very good at speaking Hindi grammatically, but their pronunciation is off, right? And we sometimes make fun, but they have learned the language, right? But if you get hung up on I have to pronounce kara as kara, then yes, you would find it hard. Right, so that becomes an issue. This is an important question because this question also applies to the last example that I'll give, which is translation. Is it harder to translate from one language to another and so on and so forth? Typically not, but translation itself is hard. Most of the languages on this side of the spectrum are agglutinative. They're attached to many things, right? We have our examples, Telugu, Tamil, are of that kind, and there are reasons for it. The sociolinguistics aspects aside, that's how they are, right? So segmentation is required, right? Sometimes we even write with sandhi, right? So Vidyalaya is an accepted word. It is a combination of Vidya and Alaya, education and house. Vidya and Alaya, so coming together. We do not separate them anymore. Now we have absorbed that word as a whole, but there are many different, such words that appear all the time and you have to figure it out. For example, the first time I landed in Hyderabad going back to Mumbai, I'm like, on the ORR, I see this board, direction, Viman Ashray. Viman Ashray. Which was completely, off my this thing. What do we call it? Huh? Hawaii Adda is one thing. Vimantal is the more common, more Sanskritized word is Vimantal. I don't know why Tal, but Vimantal is the more common word used in North. Here it was Viman Ashray. Makes perfect sense. The house for planes, right? Or shelter for planes. So thankfully it was not Viman Alay. But it was so out of cultural absorption of the word. For me, it was a pure sandhi. Right? I could not take it as a whole word. I had to sandhi vichhed it and take it. Right? So that's how languages are productive. They use these mechanisms to produce new things. Coming back to tokenization, do we use spaces? We discussed last time, not possible. Many languages do not have spaces. Morphemes are extremely hard. How do we segment? So when I said it is very expensive to separate face and faces or index and indices, right? It is extremely expensive pre-processing step. So morphological analysis or lemmatization, the process, is not a good first step, typically. Okay? So one thing we can do is either take white spaces as separation, which would result in, because of all of these new words coming in, extremely large vocabulary which would be sort of on a graph. If you see it, you have, this is frequency and this is number of words with that much frequency. What you will see is a curve like this. This is a very well-known curve. You will see it again very soon. This is Zipf's curve. Zipf's curve is not just applicable to languages, it is applicable to a lot of human created things. Okay? Human activities. We do certain things very often, then there is an orders of magnitude reduction in the next most common, and so on and so forth. That happens with languages as they evolve socially. The number of words with very high frequency is very low. There are very few words with very, very high frequency. These words are often grammatical verbs. In, on, off, blah, 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 blah. Right? These kinds of words are at the front, very high frequency. In the middle, you have the common words. Give, take, chair, dog, blah, blah, blah. Right? All of those common words, common nouns will be in the center. Then there is a long tail of words which have very little occurrence. Right? Very small frequency. So, any Vashisht here? Somebody who thinks their name is very rare. Share your name.
Samvaran.
There you go. Hey, bhai. I had 3 Sirishis in my class. It is rare in your generation. अपना नाम बता रहे हो Not that rare, because it has a very nice meaning, that word. Osama has a very nice meaning. Just because one person, I have a very, so I like old movies. There was one actor, actually the 2 actors. After that, after seeing them in movies, people stop naming their children that name. They have played such roles that this name is like, अरे इसके नाम पे रख दिया. Pran and Prem. You would not know them. Prem Chopra was, मेरा नाम है Prem Chopra. That was, there are actors, there are people who have made a name popular or have killed the name from a generation. Right? Osama would be one such name. When were you born? बच गया. 2 साल से बच गया. 2 साल बाद इसको नाम नहीं मिलता है. Right? 2 साल बाद कोई चांस नहीं था. After 2 years, there is no chance. From that generation onward, that name would be very rare, very, very rare. Could also be very popular, but it's rare. It carries a meaning after that, right? It carries a social meaning. Like you have, we have a politician named Stalin. It carries a meaning. It's not just naming a person Stalin because of the meaning of the name. Can you share the meaning of your name, please?
Courageous tiger.
Courageous tiger. Lion, actually. Lion. Osama is a courageous lion. It has a beautiful meaning. Just because one person, right? Let's not go there. So, who's courageous? What? He was also courageous. Chalo, baat maan lete hain. He lived up to his name. So, it's fair. And ideology aside, okay. So, there are uncommon names, uncommon words, even words which are just common nouns or verbs, but are used very infrequently, would fall into this category. A long tail. This basically means that you run into a language vocabulary which is running into millions of words. Okay? That still remains a problem. Meaning that is the problem that we solve by tokenization. What is the time? Done? Okay. So I'll take up the modern tokenization, statistical tokenization techniques in the next class then. But that is the problem that we are trying to solve. The same old search problem. I do not want my index to be too long.